Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I'm here to do a comparison of the original Mary Owl with the new second edition Mary Owl that was put out by Schiffer. Now, I will say I have two of the originals. Both of them are trimmed. However, I can show you what the original card looks like in the book. So I don't have an intact Mary Owl, so take that obviously with a grain of salt. In terms of, I'm just going to dive right in here. I have a walkthrough of the Mary Owl. I'll put that in the description box below. So the intention of this is not to walk through all the cards, but just to take a look at the compare the two of these together. So you can obviously see right away visually, this is the original. It is much longer and it's a little bit thinner as well. So it's longer, thinner, and the same exact depth, I suppose you would say there. So you have shorter. Definitely this is going to fit onto a shelf a little bit nicer, a slightly thicker. Not sure how to show you that. I think you can see that the new one is thicker than the other, shorter than the other, but the same depth of the deck or of the box. So we have that in terms of comparison. The original was a magnetic, but it was just a flat lid, but it was magnetic, and then it had these ribbons here to keep the lid from falling all the way back like that. The new one is one of those lovely flip magnetic boxes, which I really love. There isn't any ribbon to hold it open, but it holds open fine. This is a great box. The outer part of the box I think is really fantastic. It looks the same in terms of glossiness. Obviously you're going to see the same image, except for this one has the second edition on the outside of the box. At the front, you obviously have more room, so there are more cards. It looks to be the same cards, yeah, except for there's one additional of the Emperor on the side, but other than that, it is the same, and it doesn't have the Schiffer logo there. On the ends, we have red feather instead of Schiffer, and it says second edition. And on the other side we have red feather, we have white, the title there, and then same thing here, we have the title second edition and red feather, which is a subsidiary, I suppose. I don't know what you'd call that, of Schiffer. So I like the changes to the outside of the box. I think it's just a little bit more compact, and it just fits, I think, nicely. I think it's a nicer, more usable size to keep on a shelf. So I like that, like the changes there. I'll say right away what I don't like about the new one compared to the old one is in the inside. So you can see that this was a very thick cardboard. I'm going to pull the cards out here. Actually, I do have these extra cards, which will show us this original size. But you'll see it's a solid, this does come out, but it's a kind of a cardboard, and it's a solid structure that's here. So the cards go here, the books go here, and it's a nice solid structure. That is not the case on the new one. On the new one, we have the book, which we'll compare the book and everything. And then we have this like hodgepodge of paper, cardboard stuff. This is to keep the deck in there, and then the cardboard for the deck is this, which is wretched. Mine, even though they had the paper thing around it, were all shoved up underneath of the box, because what happens is everything just slides under there. It's really a wretched construction for 2000 in 2019. I would have thought we would be beyond this, especially with Schiffer, who are kind of known for their good boxes, in my opinion. This is ridiculous. And so what happened was, because all there is a paper band holding them, they all just fell under there. Most of them were fallen out of here and shoved up underneath. So then, of course, when things are being moved around on the store shelf, they're being banged back and forth and slid around. So that to me is not, this is a, originally I had a 20% off coupon and a 10%, but it's originally a $40 deck. So there's just no reason, in my opinion, that a $40 deck would not have the cards held securely. So box wise, this is a big fail. This part's fantastic, but this, and then this another little piece of cardboard right here, you know, that to me does not make for a $40 way to hold cards. So not a fan of that, because from forever after, right, if I want to put these cards back where they belong, they're going to slide in and out. There is absolutely no way that I can securely put these back into this construction, which means then I need to find a bag or something for this and put it in here that way, because otherwise my cards are going to be all over the place getting banged up. So not a fan of that. So we'll get over that, but I think that's important to note, because again, it's a $40 deck. It's not a $20 deck. It's $40, and so for 40 bucks from a mass market company, I would expect a far better. For example, even the Hay House Mystical Shaman, as well as the Hay House Goddess, I think both of those were around, they may not even have been $40, but they were around that higher price point, and they had a box, and then inside they had another box holding the cards so that the cards didn't bang around for the same price point. So that, I don't think that that is a lot to expect out of a $40 mass market deck. So there we have that. So the boxes, other than that inside issue, are quite similar, and I like the smaller size. I'm going to move these out of the way. So the guidebooks are the same size. Now this does have a black edging on it. That did not come that way. Patrick did that. This is a copy. Patrick had multiple copies, and he sent me one of his extra copies that he had trimmed, because I had trimmed mine wretchedly. It was where the last time I used my favorite corner rounder, and it chewed the corner, so then I had to make them extra round, and I never really liked it. So Patrick had sent me one of his that he had trimmed, and so that black edging was done by Patrick. It didn't come that way, but size-wise, the books are the same. However, you'll note right away on the inside that they are gorgeously in color, and I think this is actually a huge deal for the Marielle, because this is a deck that you're going to probably want to study and really read through some of these things. I think that that is certainly something, especially somebody new. And when you have it in color, because this deck is so stunningly gorgeous in terms of color, when you have it in color, you don't have to keep your deck in order. You can climb up in bed or curl up on the couch. You've got the color image here in actually full size. So it is the exact size of the card itself. So you have a full size card image in full color to be able to sit and work with. One of my absolute favorite deck cards of all time. So yeah, I think that's a huge, great deal. I mean, I just think that this book definitely screamed out for having full color images. So that is an amazing change, and in some ways I think it's worth, if you're really diving into the deck, I think it's worth it, obviously, just for the that color image book alone because I think it's fantastic. Card size wise, so mine are trimmed, but this was the original card size. So this is the backing. It had very wonky borders, which you can actually see. Let me pull this up out of the way so maybe you can see it better on against the wood. Where you can see where this is much thicker than the top, the side is thinner than this side. The borders are pretty much a travesty, I think, in the Mary Owl, because they were, it's not that they were just big and black, which, already, okay, at least it's a black border, which I think went well with the deck. But on top of that, the large border, they weren't even. And so again, it's quite significant. If you look at the size of this versus the size of that, it is actually quite a significant misalignment, and so a lot of people I think ended up trimming theirs, and Patrick did an amazing job. He trimmed his and kept it square, which I love. He obviously edged it in black, and then he wrote in gold pen, marker the title. So this is a beautiful rendition, and it is a joy to work with it. Size wise, once you trim the cards, is almost identical. It is just a little, let me turn it this way. There we go. It is slightly smaller than the original image trimmed. Same width, just a little bit shorter than the original, which means something had to go. So if you actually look and line these up, you can see the very top part where this branch starts to split off was lost from the top of this. So it looks like, I don't know if it's in all of them, but it looks like they just trimmed the top a little bit. So they didn't smush the image, which is good for clarity, but they did trim that little bit of the top. But it's a great size for sure, so that's fantastic there. It does come, the new one comes with the edges done in black. Mine, I've not heard if people were having any problems with theirs. Mine looks fantastic. Like, I don't have anything opposed to the borders or to the edges. They look really good, actually. Some of them are still a little bit sticky, but I haven't gone through them all yet. So yeah, so that I do like about it. The backs are the same. No changes to the back. I do like that they didn't use a massive corner round. They did just use a small corner round, which I think looks really good. I'm partial to these, but I do think they did a really good job with that. I'm not a fan of the font, but I will say that it's easy to read. So I feel like there could have been maybe a little bit of a different font there that would have been in keeping a little bit more with the look of the deck, but it's easy to read, so I can't really complain too much about that. So size-wise, though, compared to the original, you can see there's a significant size difference, but as you saw with this, the significance in the size is to do with these horrible borders, right? It's not really to do with the image itself, other than a very little bit at the top. So you're really just losing the borders plus a slight bit at the top of the card. So pretty much, in my opinion, it's pretty similar image-wise to what you got with the original, minus the black borders off of it. So size-wise, I like what they did. Borderless, I think, is fantastic for this. In terms of the gloss, you definitely can tell the difference in the gloss. This is a really, you can feel it. This is a very shiny cardstock. Whereas this definitely has got a sheen to it, but it is more matte. I wouldn't call it matte, I would call it satin. But in terms of looking at the shine, there is a significant difference in shine between the two of them. This is a nice shine. The cardstock feel, however, feels kind of cardboardy. There was one of Llewellyn's iterations of cardstock. It was like they had the original one that a lot of people complained about for a long time. I loved it to riffle shuffle, and I have to say some of my older decks that were that cardstock have held up pretty well, and I'm a riffle shuffler. Then they went to this kind of cardboardy cardstock, and then they went to their new cardstock that they have. And this kind of feels like that middle Llewellyn, where it just has a bit of a cardboard. Like you could bend this, and I know people, I've seen people came bent, or they riffle shuffled it and it bent, and it would probably not snap back. I'll give it a riffle once we're done looking at it. But the cardstock's not that great. In fact, I would argue that even though this is glossy, this cardstock feels better than this does, which could be the effects of the laminate, right? You can't win though. People don't like, a lot of people, not everybody, a lot of people don't like the laminate cardstock because it is so shiny. But then there's two things that laminate can do. It can pop the color sometimes, although I think that was a problem in older printing, because I do think that we are seeing some amazing Hay House, Blue Angel, they're putting out some matte cardstocks that are vibrantly beautiful color-wise. So I feel like that maybe was an issue before, and it's not so much in printing now. So there you have that. Size is pretty much removing the black borders. Definitely more of a satin matte finish versus the glossy, but cardstock feeling wise, it feels a lot worse. It feels like a kind of a cardboardy paper. It's not a great feeling to the actual cards. So we'll come back to the guidebook. I'm actually going to open up my window. I don't think that's going to be, I don't know if that's going to help or not, but at least for a second for me to look at these in natural light, and then I'll come back to them. You know, I have to say the color doesn't look bad. In natural light, in view, you can see it mostly in the mask. The mask looks a little more orange toned. Versus there is a little more red tone to the mask. There is just a slightly deeper color tone, I think is what it is, in those oranges that you can see, but it's not by much, and I don't really see it down here in the feet, maybe ever so slightly, but you know, and I'd say even in the blues of the dragon, but it is not significant in my opinion, at least on this card. You can see it, especially again with the natural light, you can see it, but it's not terribly significant. Yeah, I mean, the blacks here and the new blacks, I mean, they look black and deep. I would say again slightly, if you look at the warm tone that's in the sky, you can see that this warm tone is slightly deeper and or warmer. It's either that the cards are slightly warmer in the original, and a little bit cooler in the, or it's just that there is a bit more of darkness. It's deeper here, which causes that difference there. However, as I said, in the new one, you know, it's still pretty black. I suppose you could argue, if you really look, that this is a slightly deeper black, but it's not significant. It's not something that would make me say, oh, I don't like this, because of that tonal change. Make sure I don't mess these up. Now, this brings us to the first of the changed ones. So here we have the two High Priestess cards. Now, I think this High Priestess is amazing. So for me, I didn't really want or desire to have a different High Priestess card here. This is, I think, super powerful. However, I will say that in the scope of the, like, flipping through this the first time, I didn't feel like this stands out as not being similar, right? It fits, I think, with the rest of the artwork. Of course, I can say the same thing here. I didn't really feel that this stood out as being problematic or like it didn't fit. They both actually do fit. Obviously, we have a bit more of the Rider-Waite-Smith version here. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but this is stunning, and so I do love this card. I don't mind this card. You know, you do obviously have the black and white pillars, you have the pomegranates. You know, this taps into, I do like the watery floor. It definitely taps into the symbolism of the Rider-Waite-Smith image version of the image. I do like the kind of open thing there that we had similar to the Magician. I do think it's pretty cool looking. But if I had my preference, it would be this one. But I don't mind this. I'm going to keep these out. And I'm not going to go through all the cards. I'm just kind of looking through the majors. Again, same thing. I think that the laminate, or just the way it was printed out, there is a slightly deeper quality to the red is slightly deeper, the tree is slightly deeper. Some of that could be it's the same exact image and perhaps having the laminate on it because it was optimized obviously to print on this, and whether they just didn't re-optimize it for this is possible, but so you lose some of the depth of color. I don't think it's dramatic, right? If I didn't have this and I went through sorry, I'm about to lose the books over here. You know, I was in the parking lot and I wanted to see if any of the cards were bent when I purchased it at Barnes & Noble's, and so I flipped through this real quickly just to see if anything was, you know, obviously bent. And I still had a, you know, I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, like if I was just seeing this for the first time, I would be like just in awe of the color saturation and everything like that. So I don't think if this was your only version of the deck that you would be disappointed in the color. It just is slightly softer and slightly lighter than this, and you can see it like in her cheeks. I hopefully this natural light, it helps to pick it up minus the shadows. That there is just a little bit more sharp energy coloration because I think of the laminate, and there's also a slightly deeper. This could have been fixed, like they could have just taken all of the image and I think maybe upped the saturation a little bit when they switched it over. But for all we know, this looks closer to the actual paintings, right? So that's one of the things that we don't have the privilege of having the paintings in front of us. So, you know, when I was getting different copies, say, of my Lenormand deck, you know, I had my original painting to compare it to and see how close I could get to the original painting. You know, for all we know, this is closer to the original painting, and this might be slightly oversaturated. That's just not something that we know. So again, I don't think if you don't have these decks, I personally don't think you would be disappointed with the images here. It's just when you put them side by side, you can see that slight difference there. So yeah, and I'm not going to keep repeating that because it looks like that's kind of across the board. One of my all-time favorite emperors. Absolutely amazing. So the next one that we have of the differences, whoops, I have them over here. I don't know why I didn't put them in, but I didn't. Is the Hierophant. And of course, this is one of those ones that people either absolutely love or don't love. For me, it's a big don't love, just because a couple things. I do not like creepy fingers. Like, some people don't like clowns, some people don't like, you know, the things that we all have our little pet peeves about. I hate spindly fingers, and there's some decks that I've liked everything except for spindly fingers, and I haven't used the decks because I don't like those kind of long spindly looking fingers. So that's number one. And then number two, you know, I don't even like cute babies in the sun card. I can't stand six-pack babies in the sun card, and I definitely don't like alien babies. So this kind of has two things that turns me off: the spindly fingers and the and the alien babies. I don't care that she's nursing. It definitely has that sort of nun idea behind the top of the hat and all that. So I understand the card. It's just not my favorite image by far. And it's also not really the way that I read the Hierophant. So while I use the Marielle all the time, and I have actually used the Marielle with clients, I'm always in the back of my head thinking, please don't have the Hierophant show up. That's literally what I think. And you really shouldn't and need to be thinking that when you're shuffling a deck of cards. So this is the new one. I do think there is a kindliness. This definitely is a little bit more of the teachery vibe. We'll look at the guidebooks on the changed cards to see where that's going. Definitely feels, I don't even say that this feels Rider-Waite-Smith, because we don't have that sort of idea of a Pope idea here. This actually feels quite different. So I'm not opposed to this. It's not as striking and as powerful at all, and I can understand if somebody loved this, they're not going to love this, but I don't mind this. It probably comes a little bit closer to the way that I would look at the Hierophant. You can definitely see in the reds, and the reds lean more towards orange. So on this one, I feel like you can really see, I hope, the difference in color tone. Again, this is still stunning. If I just had this card, I would not be disappointed in this card. But in comparison to the reds that are here, it definitely is more orange. Now, again, I don't have the originals. I can't tell you which one of these is closer to the original painting. Only Mary White can tell us that. But I will say that this would not disappoint me by itself, but I definitely prefer that. It's just such a stunning card. They're both stunning. It's just different. So I'm going to jump ahead because I'm going to pretty much say the same thing. You can see it again in the pink around the necklace. There's definitely a saturation difference. There's no question there. So I'm not going to keep, saying the same thing over and over again. So let me... Now this, though, I will say doesn't look much different. Like just slightly, but this to me doesn't have as much of a difference. It may be in the reds and orange tones, because you can see it here, and again her hair is more orange, so you can see it there. You can see it here. It's almost like there was a bit of a red overdue of red, perhaps, which leads me to wonder, to be honest, if this might be more accurate to the paintings, just because it seems like there may have been an overdoing of red tones in this version, where that's kind of pulled away here. And so they're beautiful. It's just, but the hands and stuff look a little bit more, to me, more natural toned. So, who knows? But see, you don't see it as much in the blues and the greens tones. You don't see the difference as much. Stunning, stunning card. Yeah, I feel like it's that red tone. Again, I don't really see it much here, but you see it in the cat more. So maybe slightly darker, but it's not much. I really see, there you go again with the tower. That's pretty significant difference, and it's in that reds to orange. This is stunning. Either way, this deck, just going through this again, and even in the parking lot, I was like, oh my gosh, like this deck is so amazing. Don't see it hardly at all in the blue tones of the moon. And really, you are seeing it even in the yellow, but that's like a yellowy orange. It's like a bit of a red glaze was over those. So then this is the last of the major arcanas that was changed. Now, this is so beautiful. It's one of my favorite cards in the deck. I absolutely love this card. But this is also very beautiful. I'll definitely be interested to read. I don't know why this one would have even been changed, but they're both beautiful, and they're both phoenixes. But this, I would definitely pick this one as my absolute favorite, but I'm not opposed to this. It is beautiful, so we'll see what she has to say about that. Again, you don't see much of a difference. So that's the last one of the major arcana. It's for those red tones. Okay, so the rest of these are not in order. So I'm going to pull out the last change, which is the Three of Swords. I'm just going to slip this in here. There are a couple in the Minor Arcana, just kind of sorting through these again, that I actually like the lighter version a little bit more. I think that the baby, this is one of my favorite pages of discs, and I actually think that the image is improved by it being a little bit lighter, and there were some other ones in the Minor Arcana that I thought actually could use that little bit of lightness to make the card more visible, or the features and things like that more visible. So I will say that the color changes aren't always ones that are negative, and it is definitely mostly in the red tones from everything that I've seen so far, although I think they all are slightly lighter. But I don't think it's all, I guess my point is I don't think that it's all a negative, what I would see as being a negative by any means. So this was the Three of Swords in the original, and this is the Three of, very significant difference, right? I love this Three of Swords. Obviously, you know, I don't always love the Three of Swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith. This one I actually love, though. I mean, I don't have an issue with this. Not a bloody heart. I like the roses here. This does touch back to the Solabusca, which is where this was actually taken from. So in terms of melding of decks, because she very clearly states in the guidebook that this deck is a meld of Thoth, Rider-Waite-Smith, and a little bit Marseille. Not quite, I'll be interested, I don't know exactly what she calls, what parts she calls for the Marseille, but definitely this is a nod back to the Solabusca. So I do prefer this, obviously. This is a stunning image, but, you know, I can live with it. I can live with it. What I wish, and I've said this, Patrick and I have talked a lot about this, and what I wish is that the, I'm going to zoom out so we can see all of these. What I wish is that not she, because I'm sure it wasn't Murray White's choice. I wish that they had given us the 4 extra cards as extra cards. Because then people who absolutely love the originals could have kept the originals but still had the new less glossy stock, and you know, have it be borderless, which is how Mary White had wanted it in the first place. So, you know, these are things that the creator had originally wanted, so her being able to see that realized is great. I just really do wish they had given the extra cards as extra cards, or the change cards as extra cards, because there are a lot of people who do really love this Hierophant. There's a lot of people who, like me, I absolutely love that High Priestess. I love this Judgment card. Again, I actually don't dislike any of the new images. She's an amazing painter. I suppose we can close the curtain now so we don't have so much shadows. I just wanted you to see the color shifts there. So I did want to take a quick look at the guidebook, at the changes in the between the two things. So let's start with the High Priestess, and then let me pull up the High Priestess in this book. I should have prepared better, right? But you know, let's just wing it together. And I'm sure somebody else has probably already done this, but you know, what are we going to do? We all kind of put our own bent on things. Well, I will say I'm just kind of comparing the text, and I don't see anything changed in, it's exactly the same length, so it doesn't. Now, I will say this. Okay, here's a change. Right here it talks about these lifelines or the tentacles as a kraken like dark rivers. The symbols for this life that the High Priestess contains is the scroll or the book, or in the Mary Owl it is the Tree of Life glyph on her belly. So that of course is changed. It just says the symbols for this life that the High Priestess contains is the flame with the Hebrew letters for the word Torah. Oops, I've got the wrong things here. Sorry. That would have been helpful this whole time. Sorry about that. So you have the flames there. So that has changed in the guidebook. Okay, so let's take a look at the Hierophant. Now here we do see a change where we see the two grotesque babies she is suckling are the harlots and abominations of the earth. And here instead it says the two snakes becoming winged serpents are the harlots and the abominations of the earth. So these are right here. They don't look like abominations to me. These do look like abominations, I will say. The key to this card is the key that lies over her heart, which is still there. Both of them have the key over the heart, so that hasn't changed. There's an undeniable darkness to this card, this and of all the fives, and it is not so without reason. I will say that this looks more in alignment with the chaos and the destructive nature of 5. This has a very peaceful nature, other than perhaps the snakes coming up to choke this person. Suffering, yeah, it doesn't seem to be much. Now we change, so we talk about the right and left eye of Oedipus, the right and left eyes of Odin, the eyes of Horus, all of this, but instead it's comparing the babies versus the snakes. So it seems in the images that the babies, the snakes, have taken up the position in the text as the babies. And so you are seeing the yin and yang snakes. Instead of the yin and yang twins, you're seeing the yin and yang snakes. But other than that, it's pretty similar. Not a whole lot has changed, just to make way for the different text there. And then I'm sure we're going to see the same thing with Judgment. Now, the Three of Swords is on a different page, so that's there. So this has changed. The quote has changed. It was, "Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead." William Blake from Songs of Innocence and Experience. Instead, we have one by Anne Bronte that says, "But he that dares not grasp the thorn should never crave the rose," which I do think is pretty powerful. So here we have, oh my goodness, she made me jump. Let's read both of these because these aren't very long. So in the one with the dove, the original, it says, "A descending dove, symbol of love, into the flesh she goes. He carries the arrows of the sun's light, or God's creative seminal light, through the clouds and through the air to earth. A wedding, heaven and earth. Little dove, so gentle and pure, falling like an untainted snowflake, just as fleeting and delicate, virginal, melting on the fires of earth. Covered by the predatory life forms, pouncing, eating, and consuming, imprisoned in their cells, bones, sinew, muscle, blood, nerves, flesh. Where did you come from, little dove? Where did you want to go back to? Little dove, an eagle you will become. Stretch your wings and sharpen your talons. Handsome and bold, look at the curve of the earth. Find your 2 heads. Break free from your prison of flesh. Shed it like a winter first coat in spring, and break free from gravity. Fly triumphant to heaven from whence you came, conquering hero, eagle, and man exalted. Scorpio risen, experienced, knowing, intentional, a dove, the seed of stars. I had a dream once of swords and doves mating and becoming an eagle." Let me see if the keyword, yeah, see the keywords have totally changed. Which is too bad because I love this. Accepting divine gifts and energy, accepting a divine soul, rays of light, captured by the dove, brought to earth, divine sweet heartache. The agent that wounded your heart was a divine gift to begin with. Where here we have very much the Rider-Waite-Smith of sorrow, broken heart, heartache, pain, suffering, sadness, and loneliness. It's like pure Rider-Waite-Smith. So that's too bad because I think that you could have talked about, let's read this one. So it says the Three of Swords is the heart of the Empress. There are 3 swords piercing it, 3 sorrows, 3 pains, 3 points of separation. This is the bittersweet nature of a heart that loves completely and generously, of a mother and a compassionate person. Like a rose, it is the ultimate in large, beautiful, fragrant flowers, but it comes with painful thorns. It is the self-sacrifice you make for that amount of love, heart, and compassion. Conversely, the heart tempers the swords. The heart gives the swords strength and purpose. Swords are air and the element of balance and justice. In the bounty of the Empress and in life itself, there is the whole spectrum of pleasure and suffering, love, joy, and loss. All of it together is inseparable completeness. Besides the dichotomy of the rose and the thorn, the red roses are symbolic of love triumphant. So I do like this write-up. You know, it does speak to the fact that yes, the heart can learn from the swords, and the swords can be tempered by the heart, and so there's growth from the roses and growth from pain. So for me as a reader, in the way that I read the Three of Swords, this works because we do still have this concept of growth. We have this idea of growing from both beauty and pain, which is how I see the Three of Swords. So I don't mind this. I do just think that the image with the bird is so beautiful. However, this is where I want to pause for a second, and I'll put a link to this in the description box. There is her webpage where she talks about the changes that she made. And I do think that taking a moment to read that is fantastic, because you do get to see where she was coming from. And so she does talk about the Solobuska here, and obviously we do know that this was the Rider-Waite-Smith that was influenced by this. She shows an image of the Solobuska from the Three of Swords, and she said that when she first painted the card, she wanted the swords to be piercing something that was more related to air, so that's why she chose the dove. As time went on, I found myself envisioning the heart with this card rather than the dove. I saw the heart as the heart of the Empress, a mother's heart. And then, of course, I've read all that she's talking about. And she talks about roses. So she goes into some more depth here about what she, why she made the changes that she has made. When she's talking about the Judgment card, she talks about the fact that the changes was mostly aesthetic. The Phoenix is still there. She wanted a more circular vision. The Phoenix implies not just one death and rising, but a cyclical of death and birth cycle. And she says, I see this card as the outer edges of the dualistic world, and beyond it is 21, the world, which encompasses everything. So yeah, so for her that sounds like this was a bit more aesthetic. But anyways, I'll put a link to this because she does talk about all 4 of the cards, and what was in her thought process when she was making those changes. I am sure, well, I can't say I'm sure because I'm not. I wasn't there. My guess is that, just in terms of marketability, this card definitely gets a lot of, oh, I love that deck except for this card. And again, you have people who absolutely love this card. But I think there was definitely a lot of conversation about this card. And so I can certainly see in terms of a marketing sense why that would change. The rest of these, I think, do, to me, seem more aesthetics than anything. But, so there you have it. That seems to me the only changes, again, that was just a couple cards. I'm going to read through it. But the main change in text is with the Three of Swords because the image is completely changed. Where these seem to be just more like tweaks to fit the new image in there versus full-on changes. So I don't know how much else was changed here. But I will say that I absolutely love the addition of the colored images. So in terms of my own space, because obviously this is where I do readings, and I know that what you're seeing right now doesn't show that reflection as much, but from the way that because it's the way that my lights are set so that it does film well, to my actual eyesight, this is very, has a lot of glare to it, and it actually, over time, when I have a larger reading, things that are super glossy like this actually do give me eye strain, just because of the way that I have my light set. That's not the fault of the card, but I will say this does not. There's still a sheen to it, but in terms of visibility for me as a reader, this kind of satin matte sheen is far better than the glossy, even though this does, you know, have a beautiful color pop to it. So just pointing that out there. Okay, so let's just give this a shuffle and see how we feel. I've heard some people have bent their cards. Yeah, I mean, it's not great. It's not horrible, but it's not great. It's not US Games. I like US Game cardstock. I even like Llewellyn cardstock. I will say it riffles, like you do get a nice, pretty nice. There's still some chunky cards I do need to go through and probably go through once and separate everything out. I mean, a lot of people don't riffle shuffle, especially when there's gilding, but I do, whether there's gilding or not. That's just me. So it doesn't feel like horrible. I have certainly seen worse cardstocks, but not for 40 bucks. And that's the thing. This is not a cheap deck, which is fine with me, but given the art alone, this is not just art that's been pulled in. This is stunning, you know, museum quality artwork. And I don't think that there is a problem with paying money for that. But the production, you know, this cardstock for 40 bucks is not what I would expect in a cardstock that's 40 bucks, or in a deck that's $40. So definitely not a big fan of the cardstock, but I also don't hate it. And I would still have to say that, oh, I forgot to take these out. Those are like the extra cards. You know, the size is absolutely perfect and amazing for, obviously, my space in terms of reading, but I already kind of had that. Like, this isn't any different. I can easily use it once it's trimmed down like this. I can easily use this, but I don't have the glare, which is lovely. And sorry, folks, but I also don't have the Hierophant, which is a big deal for me. So all in all, hopefully this helps a little bit. And if you're thinking about whether or not, you know, if you already have this and you're trying to decide if you want to get this, I think it's going to come down to, if you really hate the gloss, it's going to come down to if you really maybe hate the Hierophant and want to shift it. I do think, again, as I said, the differences in color tone for me seem to be on the ones that have red. That's where you're going to see it the most. But I don't think if this was the version that you had that you would be disappointed in it. Like, it's really beautiful. So if you don't have the original and you want to get this version, I personally just don't see you being disappointed in the colors in this particular deck. I do think that the new cards fit. Truthfully, this one probably fits the least for me in terms of fitting along with the other artwork, but I don't think any of that's going to stand out there. So the color is definitely slightly softer or slightly lighter, and you mostly see it in the reds and the oranges, but I just don't think, if this is the deck that you have, that you would be disappointed with the images. The cardstock, not great, but neither is the cardstock of the original, right? It's super, super glossy. Has, if you buy the actual nude or first edition, the stock is super glossy and the borders are horrible. The borders are really wonky and they're not straight. They're very noticeably not straight. So there's issues with both cardstocks. But this definitely, the cardstock feels sturdier despite the gloss. It just has a more substantial feel to it than the original, or than the second edition does. So, you know, it's just one of those things. I think it's going to come down to, like me, I just want both because I think it's an absolutely stunning deck. I think it's a deck that should be a standout for the time period, you know, of decks coming out in the time period of the Marielle, I feel like this will be one that's talked about because it's just so incredibly amazing, and the artwork is so incredibly powerful that I just feel like this is going to be a deck that will be talked about when people look back on this time frame of decks, powerful decks. I do think the Marielle, if it's not, it should be one that's spoken of, so I would want to have both of the copies. But again, if it was my personal druthers, I wish they'd just given us the change cards as extra cards, and then people could build how they want it. But, you know, that was not up to me. So hopefully this helps in some way, shape, or form. Whether you're deciding to just get this or just get that, or you already have that and you're trying to decide if you want to get that. I'm actually glad to have both of them. I can do readings for people and not worry about the Hierophant coming up. And that doesn't make this an easy reader, right? There are definitely male genitalia and such that are quite obvious as well as female. This is not a deck that is, you know, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. Obviously, if I was reading for a kid or something, I wouldn't be using the Marielle. But I do have certain clients that I have used this version of the Marielle with, and to no issue whatsoever. Nudity doesn't really bother me. And so it wasn't the nudity in the Hierophant that bothered me. It was just the alien fingers and the alien babies. So there we go. I'm going to stop talking. And I hope you have a wonderful day.